But I'd like to start off with saying my mom apologizes. She's sick as a dog upstairs, but that allows me to be a little more risque with my speech. So I'm going to let it rip. I'm just kidding. Drew and Rob, it's been real knowing you together. And then obviously I've known Drew a little longer apart. So that's been nice. Growing up with Drew was fun. I always, of course, grass is always greener, and I always wanted a brother that I could kind of play sports with and stuff. Drew she was bigger than me until I was about 10 years old, so I didn't need a brother. She beat me up a lot, teased me. She would dress me up with her friends who were mostly sitting at this table, which is some sort of weird torture. But all in all, I was actually nervous because most of my good friends have brothers who would make them their best man. I always wanted to be a best man because I always wanted to give a speech. So Drew actually surprised me, yeah, and she surprised me up in Chicago where I live, and it was at the time I was on antibiotics. I was sick, and it was right around the time Bruce Jenner had a sex change. So obviously I was a weak man, and I cried like a little baby whenever she asked me to do it. Shortly after, I did a lot of push-ups and stuff like that. But I graciously said yes, not knowing what the hell I got myself into. And then I had heard about Rob previously, obviously, and I asked the same question I usually do, is does he play offensive line for the Bears? And much to my chagrin, and much like her other boyfriends, he didn't. And so I immediately did not like him. But my parents assured me that he did play offensive line, so I was like, all right, cool. I wanted him to play offensive line because we are protectors, and we usually get to eat everything in our sight, so we're generally happy people. So I was like, all right, perfect. When I first met him, he had a really strong handshake. It was a little too strong. But I was okay with it. The second thing they had told me is that he didn't play for the Bears, but he played for Maroa Forsyth. No. And I am a St. Teresa Bulldog through and through. And I am no stranger to my fair share of Maroa women. So I figured who better to give back than my only sister, Drew. So you're welcome, Rob. And thank you, Maroa. No, but seriously, Drew, obviously, we have a great bond. I love you to death. Rob, you are the Paul Walker to my Vin Diesel. And I'm really happy that you can tolerate everybody in my family. That is the toughest job anybody has in the world. And I commend you on everything. And congrats to you guys. I love you guys to death. And please cheers to the happy couple. Cheers.
Oh, there we go. It was muted. All right. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Blake. I'm Rob's little brother, and I am an accountant. And I mention that fact because I feel like that lowers the bar for having to give public speeches by a lot. I feel like if I make it through this without bursting into tears, there's at least one person that'll go, all right, but he's an accountant. That makes sense. But I know that as best man, it's my job to try and embarrass my brother at least a little bit. So I think the best way to do that, and probably embodies Rob's personality the most, is there's a story of Rob was probably 7, 8 years old, and it was summertime, and he was with Logan Schroeder and Logan's dad. And then apparently Mr. Schroeder's just trying to make conversation with Rob and says, "So, Rob, what are you doing to stay out of trouble this summer?" To which Rob replies, "Lying, mostly." So he's 7 or 8 years old and that quick. So Drew, I'm really glad that you went to law school because you're going to need every dime of that training. But I do remember when Rob first was talking to me about Drew, I had just started dating a girl right around the exact same time that Rob started dating Drew. And it's been about 2 or 3 months since we started dating, and I call Rob to talk to him, and he's just talking about Drew, and his only concern is what kind of dog they're gonna get next whenever they get another dog. And I remember being so confused because I'm like, it's been 2 or 3 months. Like, I've not told my girlfriend that I love her. Like, I'm not considering marriage. And he's thinking years into the future about dogs and what they should name their new dog. And then it all kind of made sense when I came home to visit and finally met Drew. Because for as long as I can remember, my brother is frustratingly good at everything. I get a new video game, he beats me at it that night. He scored 1 point higher than me on the ACT, which I am still bitter about. And he's even better at practical jokes, like the time that he convinced an unnamed member of our family, whose name rhymes with mom, that peripheral vision is only up and down, or sorry, peripheral vision is only left and right, up and down is veriferal vision. She claims she didn't believe that. But so, for as frustratingly good as Rob is at everything, that's why I was so glad when I met Drew that she's just as smart as she is, just as funny as he is, and thankfully doesn't take any of his crap. But Drew, you have turned my brother into a kind, sensitive, caring person that frankly I don't recognize anymore. So I'm so glad that you guys met each other. I love both of you. Thank you so much for having me here. And to Rob and Drew,